So welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Soundbites with RokoM and Michelle. And this week we're going to do the power of and. Yes, that's it. So we'll unpack it a little bit more, and hopefully you have an appreciation for it like we do. So I'm going to kick us off with a quote from John Maxwell, and it's that leadership is the power of one harnessing the power of many. And so people that know me know that I say words matter. And it's not any more true than what it is in this situation, right? And Roko and I learned it in the positive intelligence program we went through, and saying yes and so the idea of and, because but negates things, right? It's like hard stop, push it aside. If we can just look and add on to what someone else has contributed, to where we can step in and go, okay, fine, somebody has an idea, instead of in your head going, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Think to yourself, what about it can I build on? Mm-hmm. And then you can start going yes and, or just and it's inclusive and it involves people, and we make connections that way. Yeah. So what are your thoughts? You're bobbing your head.
So, you said, words matter, and totally agree with that. It's a small word, but it can go a long way or make a big difference in how we think or how others think about your conversation that you're having. There's psychology behind it, and implies there's negotiation, there's conversation that's still to be had about the thing. Whereas but or denotes that you've been dismissed, or I'm using my title or position or opinion and shutting down the conversation, and only my interpretation matters. And so the psychology behind that, in my mind, is that is the shift, if you will, that can move a conversation forward or engage a team. If you think about this in the workplace, it's a way to engage the team. It's a way to keep the innovation alive.
Well, and it's validating, right? So if I think about it, because if you use but, we've all heard people go, oh, that'd be a great idea if it wasn't such a bad idea, right? That's what the but is saying.
That's what the but is saying. Yeah.
But if you go around, it's like I was in a room with leaders, and I pulled in. So someone else was teaching positive intelligence, Shirzad, so PQ, right? And we were giving different activities and different things you could do. And the one activity that I love was the yes and. I call it the yes and. And people started calling it yes and. But we had a bunch of leaders in the room negotiating with each other, trying to come to this agreement on something. And they all, we tend to defend our position, right? Wherever that may be. And so when this particular activity was introduced on a way, to practice as we went in to try to, get alignment on something, I told people, I said, this is my favorite one because it's so freaking easy to use. And it's just, I call it the yes and. And so I'm facilitating this group, and one of the leaders, because I needed to pause her because somebody else was going to step in, she goes, but I was going to do a yes and. So what happens is it shifts our mindset. Instead of looking for what's not working, what can I build on? And so we approach things with a completely different energy, because it's like, okay, so they're saying this stuff, instead of thinking that's so irritating, my God, just stop talking. You're actually looking for, and yes, I've had those thoughts in my head, okay? but you're actually looking for, what's the thing that I can build on.
Yeah.
Which you're looking for totally different stuff then.
Yes. So I'm going to date myself. In the problem solving world, we used to do these things called gallery walks. And when we were designing a process or redesigning an existing process, we'd have like these components, posted up all over the wall, and you would do a gallery walk, and you're basically putting down your ideas. You couldn't judge the ideas that were already on the flip chart. You could only add to it. And so in a sense, that was the and in practice. Many, many years later, and moving into coaching and to leadership roles, how it shows up now is when teams get stuck, instead of saying the but or the or, changing my language to include and to offer a new perspective, or like you said, building on what they may have said, but helping them to see that there's more to the story, or there's more to the thinking than just what's been shared, and without, shutting it down or dismissing. So,
well, and I just, and it's like leapfrogging, when you do that. And I just think I've been on the receiving of the yes and part, right? And when you see your one section of your idea that you had courage to throw out into the room in the first place, okay, because it takes courage. Someone's taken a nugget from that and they're pulling it forward into something else. It freaking feels good.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I want to stay engaged, and I'm going to do it because I had that little piece, or it started from the little seed I planted, and it makes a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to use a real world example. Since COVID, a lot of workplaces have had to go virtual. And as we are
so a lot of workplaces have gotten to go virtual. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Gotten to go virtual. Yes. and now that we at least have a response to COVID and know how more about it and how to manage it, there's this tension between, do we bring the workforce back in? And some of the team conversations that I've had in my workplace is, around that, employees are saying, I want to stay remote, and here are all the benefits of staying remote. And I think probably 10 years ago, I probably would have said, but the organization needs you to be here in person, and now knowing what the power of and is, I can say, and I need to make sure that this is covered. And it's an in-person engagement. How might we find that, what could we do? So it's not, and I'm not saying no to the virtual. I'm also presenting here's some things that we have to consider.
Exactly.
So what is it that we can do to now align and connect in a way that's going to meet our needs?
Yeah. Well, no, and what you're talking about is, and I've shared this with people before, had COVID and the remote thing lasted a month or two, we would have gone back to the old way of life. It wouldn't have been long enough that people would have gotten accustomed to something else, but it's freaking 2.5 years, and so organizations are doing things differently now, and they're not quiet about it. They recognize that, there's a better work-life balance, that the windshield time of people having to drive to work and drive back home, that, and Christopher Mack, said something about it too. It's like people have their kids that at the beginning, come in to, ask real questions because the parent's at home, the door's not locked. And it's a different world. And I think people are more accepting and tolerant of it. So before it'd be like, if your dog barked or some people go, what, really? Dogs bark? And now it's like laughing. Oh my God, what kind of a dog do you have? And, it's a completely different vibe. Yeah. And so what happens when you have that situation in yours, it's like, can you support people virtually and do improvement? And yes. Is it ideal? No. So the and part of it matters because you have people that have experienced that they've been remote a different life. And so literally you're change management 101 right now. And so it's like, how do we bring them back in? Yes. How can we do this and have you get the experience that you've had and support the client?
Yeah. And it doesn't create this adversarial relationship between the two people.
Yeah.
It allows you to come together and, you know, think together about what you can do. What could we do to meet the needs? I mean, I think that was the true power behind it for me, is that and we've talked about this before, is that traditional leadership, the leadership had to know and solve all of the problems. They were the subject matter expert.
Yep.
And what we now know is that we were underutilizing the intelligence of our team and losing out on their intelligence.
Yes.
And so if you can replace the word but or with and, you can now engage and start utilizing the intelligence that's out there by creating that space and that environment to have those positive conversations. I think there was an article that I shared with you, and it was talking about the word and creates this positive dialogue versus creating a denial in the conversation and shutting it down. And I think that was like really key.
Yeah. And an article on leadership with and. So yeah, I so agree. It's the simplest things and it's the smallest shifts that make the biggest difference. Yeah. So thank you. So Roko, what's 1 to 2 things you want someone to walk away with?
Small world, a small word.
small world too. It is a small world.
Small word, powerful impact, and just start trying to replace the buts with the and.
Yeah. So completely agree. Yes. And the other thing that comes to mind for me is when we're leaders learning something and practicing doing something different, be transparent with your teams about what you're doing. Yeah. Share with them, pull the curtain back and say, hey, there's a shift I'm going to try and make. And I encourage all of you to do it too. Let's build on what other people are saying and their ideas and shift out, replace but with and. Be transparent. So have other people do it too. And I think the success that you'll have will increase because it will be this team thing that we're all doing together, and the awareness just skyrockets too. So that would be my thing to suggest. So this has been, I love the power of and. Leadership Soundbites with RokoM. Michelle, please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, and we'd love to hear your topics. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.